Good to have you again today. Thank you very much for being part of the program. My name is Dakbo Aruwajwe. The screening starts tomorrow. And when I talk about the screening of the ministerial nominees, 21 of them, starts tomorrow at the Senate. So we thought on the program today, why don't we critically do some analysis of the screening and get to understand the criteria that has been brought forth. And to help us do the discussion today, I have Clem Baye, is a policy analyst. Good morning, Clem, for being part of the program.
Good morning, Dakwa.
Yes. Over the weekend, we saw some tweets, some from the Nigerian Senate and some from the Senate President himself. And in one of the tweets, Saraki was saying that the ministerial screening will be free and fair and will not be based on who the senators like or do not like. What's your take on that statement, sir?
It's a good statement, but it comes with too much optimism on the part of the Senate President. The thing is that during screening, there are supposed to be objective criteria for screening. Those criteria have to do with the experience of the people, cognate or non-cognate. They have to do with their caliber. What do they stand for and who do they represent? Then there are subjective ones. The subjective ones include some of the things that the Senate over the years has decided for itself, like saying, for instance, that if, let's say, I were from Lagos State, or if I was a nominee from Lagos State, where I'm ordinarily resident for practically half of my adult life, and I got there, at least 2 senators from Lagos State should accept my nomination. That is a subjective thing.
Okay.
There's also the subjective thing that says that if I had been a member of the State House of Assembly in Gombe State many years back, I'm a legislator. And in their consideration, once you are a legislator, you must be able to be a minister. Because in their thinking, what qualifies you to be a legislator and you've held that position before means that you are more than competent to be a minister of the Federal Republic.
Is it a federal legislator or even a state legislator?
Even state.
Okay.
Even state.
Okay.
Okay. So those are some of the things. And during David Mark's presidency, there was also the aspect of if you're a retired military officer, he would simply say, don't forget that David Mark once said that you know, whether he said a private or a corporal in the Nigerian army is more intelligent than a Nigerian graduate. I suspect he said something to that effect. So in his time, it was the policy that if you were a retired military officer, you simply took a bow and you left. So those are the subjective ones. The objective ones are clear that, I mean, there should be a nominee from each state of the Federation.
Okay. What about the first part of it? Was it the objective ones?
Yes.
The ones whereby how do you measure the integrity? How do you measure the sincerity or the sincerity of
competence?
The competence of an individual.
Absolutely. I think your question is dead set. I mean, the challenge is this, that what you're looking at is this. At times, we, you know, in this country, we look at protocol, you know, competence. Oh, he's been a governor before. So if he has been a governor before, a minister should be a cakewalk for that person. But that is not true. That is simply not true, because you could have been a governor. First of all, you could have been an incompetent governor. I mean, over the years, it's happened from Shagari's time in '79. Some governors that were not particularly competent were on his ministerial list. So you have issues like that. Another subjective thing, which I wanted to mention, has to do with the age of the people and also their gender preference. And there is some cry that this current list contains, I think, just 3 ministerial nominees that are feminine, if I remember correctly.
Yes, 3. Yes.
So there would be 1 or 2 people feeling that, oh, if you're going to have a list of 21, just 3 out of 21 does not look compensatory.
And even the age also, they believe other people there are like the elderly.
Yeah, you see, those are some challenges. Don't forget that I have white hair, so I should not be speaking against old people, okay? But the challenge is this, that ideally, if our political process has not been truncated several times, by now, somebody like Audu Ogbe, who was minister, remember, he was a member of Benue State House of Assembly.
Yes.
He was deputy speaker.
Yes.
And sometime, the former president, Shehu Shagari, made him Minister for Communications, if I remember correctly. Now,
and he was screened by the father of the president, Senate president. So something like that. I heard the story also.
Okay, yes, because he was Senate leader. Okay, his father, late father, was Senate president. Now, somebody like that, he would have built up a long political profile. In between, he has been chairman of the PDP as it was constituted before, you know, it broke into factions, or if at all. Somebody like that, he would have had a long process of tutelage. So by now, he should be ready for something, you know, very serious, for a very serious assignment. And we need many people like that.
With the experience.
With experience. And you need a cabinet of people who are also quite very young. Who are young, but when I said young, I didn't say they're immature. You can be young and be mature.
Yes.
All right? So they're young, but they have a mature mind for them to begin the grooming process. So to that extent, I would agree with those who feel that we need, you know, the balance, the preponderance should not be tilted against the youth.
So what percentage of the youth should we be looking at?
Anything I say is a guesswork. It can be just a rule of thumb. It doesn't necessarily add. But you see, what I want to tell you is this. Okay, for instance, I need to go to the American system.
Okay.
So I would borrow from there. Okay, when Jimmy Carter became president of the U.S. in 1976, if I took over in 1977, January, you know, January 20, he was 49 years plus. Now, he had his chief of staff, Hamilton, Jordan Hamilton, or Hamilton Jordan, was his chief of staff. He had his press secretary, Jody Powell. These were people that were pretty young people. But for his cabinet, and national security advisor, he had people that were, you know, quite senior.
Okay.
I mean, Harold Brown, who was his defense secretary, was about 66.
Wow.
Why? The bureaucracy of the Pentagon can consume anybody. And when you are Secretary of Defense, you are in charge of close to 1 million people scattered all over the globe. Nuclear powers, this, that, and the rest of it. Nuclear facilities, nuclear arms, and the rest of it. So you need somebody who is very experienced, who has a sound mind, who is mature, who is calm, to be able to take a job like that.
And not easily intimidated.
Not easily intimidated. Now, don't forget too, that when Shagari was minister, you had Bello Maitama, who was very young, who was barely in his 30s. You had Muhammad Ibrahim Hassan, who was also very young, who was barely in his 30s. And how old was Audu Ogbe at that time? Your guess is as good as mine. Okay? So, if the process were not truncated, these people would have learned the ropes. And by now, they would have been ready for either more senior appointments or possibly more senior ambassadorial appointments, not necessarily executive appointments, but maybe ambassadorial. But let us take that away. We need to look critically that in the near future, we don't know what the second list will contain. We're still expecting another 15. Because constitutionally, we must have minimum 36 ministers. And I hope it won't be more than that.
Okay. I should have started with this, really, because The Senate has urged Nigerians who have questions they would like to ask to send these questions to. They said send it to a Senate handle at NGR Senate using the hashtag Ministerial screening. And Saraki said every Nigerian is going to have an opportunity to be part of this because it's going to be beamed live. Do you think, and he said this is not going to be the Senate, the old Senate, this is a new Senate. Yeah. Do you think with all this, they're going to be carrying the people along? If
that is what the Senate president says, and they're going to do that, that will be novel and that will be good. The reason is that even in Britain today, the British Labour Party leader, there's what they call Prime Minister's question time. Recently, he decided to outsource it. He said, listen, Prime Minister's question time should be the questions that ordinary people feel about. If that is what Saraki is doing, that is, that is welcome. But the challenge is this. One, the practice here is that the positions those people are going to occupy is not necessarily given.
Yes, it's not.
It's not. It can be inferred. But at times, even when you infer, it could be wrong. Do you understand? Some people may be inferring, for instance, that General Dambazao is going to be Minister of Defense. Supposing he's not made Minister of Defense. All right? Because I'm not sure about the convention in Nigeria. In the US, if you've been a serving military officer, you cannot be posted to be Secretary of Defense or Army Secretary, Navy Secretary, Air Force Secretary until there's been a lapse of about 10 years.
Okay.
Yes, yes. That's the...
That you've been out of the system.
Yes, you've been out of the system about 10 years. Because they don't want you to come... You see, there's a fixation. If this is how you've been doing things, the tendency is that when you come back to that same thing, you want to do it the same all over. And they don't accept that the world stands still. The world keeps changing. Threats are different. So those are those are challenges that we're about to face. But if that is what the Senate president is going to do, I think it's a welcome thing. It's an innovation, and it should be welcome.
It should be welcome.
Because it has some bit of objectivity about it. If people send in their questions, they can ask questions of people.
But the dimension you brought in again about when people come in, okay, you've been nominated.
Yeah.
But the problem is... okay, the Senate spokesperson, Dino Malayi, was saying this is going to be rigorous and it's going to be thorough. But since the dimension you brought in, since we don't even know if you are going to be the Minister of Defense, so how is it going to be very, very thorough? How do I ask you? How do I know the questions to ask you?
Absolutely. Those are the challenges. Those are the challenges. And you see, some of the things that the Senate spokesman is saying, they're not things that are enforceable. He is saying that it's going to be thorough, it's going to be different. They're saying it's going to be thorough, it's going to be different. Now, you ask me, are they going to now tell, look, Ngige was a senator?
Yes.
So are they going to tell people like that? Audogbe was a legislator before he became a minister, and he's been, he's had this long experience span. Are they going to tell me that they're going to be asking them questions? It goes against another policy of theirs.
Yes, and even Amechi was a legislator.
Amechi was speaker.
Speaker
of the River State House of Assembly.
And it's going to be, he said it's not going to be the same bow and go syndrome. It's going to be different. The norm is going to be changed now. But now with all these former legislators, how do we do it? All these former legislators, how do we do it? How do they are not going to screen them? He said it's going to be rigorous, but for those that have been this camarade kind of feeling.
What I think they're saying, and this is a guesswork, is that if somebody like Dapo, like you, is nominated, you've never been a senator, I don't know that, you've never been even a local council chairman.
No, I've never.
Then the thoroughness will apply to you.
But not to...
not to the other.
The core,
yes,
the
and that takes the guilt out of the gingerbread. If they mean to do a serious work, what they ought to have done, which I doubt they will listen to this council, is that they should scrap their entire policies listen, how do you say to me that if you are from a particular nominee from a state, at least 2 senators must endorse your something?
But they said it's not sacrosanct. Now, the latest over the weekend is not sacrosanct. If the ministerial nominee has complied or yes with the other criteria.
Okay, you see now, this is leaving me twisted and contorted.
Yes.
Because they're saying one thing and they're saying another.
It's left me twisted also.
Yes. Now, you see, the problem is that same last week, a statement came out saying they should go and meet their state senators and show respect to them. Something to that effect. Now, what does that exactly mean?
Show respect. That means you have to be humble, or you have to be,
go to them, bow to them, things like that. Any other thing? Something above the table?
Something above the table
that they need to do to make sure that they
maybe
get
a little bit of I scratch your back, you scratch my back.
Is that what they are saying? I do not know. These are questions that the answers will come from the way they screen this.
But without 2 ministers from each state, I think that you remember the Obanikoro time also.
Yeah.
That was to come into play. 2 senators from each state.
Yeah.
But that did not come into play because we were going to watch it that day on the TV screen. Maybe Senator Tinubu, maybe it was Ashafa was there also. They could move, but they were not allowed. So is it going to come into, though they said it's not sacrosanct, but do you think it would have made any sense?
It's all part of what I'm saying, that we as a nation, we have not been consistent. And we as a nation, we've not demanded of our leaders to be consistent in the application of the rules. Now, the reason why we are not consistent is that those rules don't lend themselves to above-board principles. If you look at them in every material detail, they don't lend themselves to above-board principles. If you say that, for instance, that you have to have the support of 2 senators from your state, that doesn't really matter. What I would have thought is a completely radical approach to this thing. I don't think that will be bought, and it's not likely to be implemented this time. Do
you want to share the approach?
Now, what I would have thought is to say, from beginning, everybody is on the same plate and the same table. What table is it? You are a nominee. We are going to find out your competence, things you claimed about yourself. Let us say I were an engineer. Let's say I'm an electronic engineer. And maybe the president thinks I will do well in power or something like that. And I claimed certain things and said that that I went to Massachusetts Institute of Technology and that I invented some particular thing. Those are the things they should be checking. That, okay, we do not have something about this person, but he claims to have done this, he has done this. Their role is to check that all those claims that I've made, that I invented certain things that will save power, and so I can come and do power, they will check it. Now, because it is not written against my name that this is the ministry is going to be given, then it behoves the Senate to look at the claims that I have made about myself. And this work they would have done, and then people come in. What they call screening, the Americans call it confirmation hearings.
That's where I was going to. So the screening is basically done maybe by the security, the police, and some maybe the DSS.
Yes, and so on.
Because the Senate just comes to look at the information given.
They just look at the information that they're given. They do not know whether these things are true or they are not true. A particular minister under the former president, that is the immediate former president, claimed many things. But next, that newspaper, which is not
Next,
it came out with a lot of investigations about the claims made by that particular minister, and they turned out not to be true. And some of them are being repeated now online because the minister is left now, is facing a lot of fire over certain things in the ministry that was, had been headed. And all that you are seeing is that the screening, quote unquote, was not proper. What is supposed to happen is this, and it's not just as a legislator. What's supposed to happen is this, and we will get there sometime. From beginning, the president could have sent 3-4 names.
Okay.
Minister of Defense. So, Senate Committee on Defense, we screen.
Screen the 4.
Yeah.
To get 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, he will say, let's say he sent Minister of Interior or Minister of Internal Affairs. Interior,
Affairs.
they call
okay.
it now.
Yes, Interior.
Okay, Minister of Foreign Affairs. I'm just using this. And Minister of Finance. He sends those names first. All right? So, the appropriate committees of the Senate is to talk to these people and vote on them. And then those people don't come to the main body. There's no need for them to come to the main body. What the people come to the main body to do is to bow towards the Senate President, bow towards the General House, and the Senate Chamber, and then bow again, bow 3 times. And then they're told, whenever you see a senator, you should bow because they are your boss. I think things should be more serious than that. What ought to have happened, ideally, is that the committees of the Senate would have spent time with these people, and they would have grilled them thoroughly. Let us say, for instance, you're a civilian, you never served in the military, but you have a lot of background in military strategy. All right? And you had a PhD in military science. And because of that, they're considering you as Minister of Defense. Somebody is going to take you up. Maybe there was some time when you said that there can never be insurgency in Nigeria. Insurgency will never happen in Nigeria. That for the next 100 years, it's going to be conventional warfare. Somebody is going to take you up and say, hey, Dakpo, you said that there can never be any insurgency. There can never be any insurgency. Now we have insurgency. So it means that you don't really know your subject. So it will now be decided whether this Dakpo, claiming to be an expert in this area, we have found that he's a giant with feet of clay. Does he really deserve to be a minister?
And in that
particular something.
I know, but maybe that's what happens at the end of the day when you see they say the reshuffling of the ministers. Should that be the instance? You just reshuffle a minister of agric, you make him a minister of finance, or minister of finance, you make him
that
minister
is the problem. Therefore, look, if I were minister of housing, and the president now decides in a proper presidential system, we will improve every day, okay? But we're talking about the ideal, and we have the right to talk about the ideal.
Yes.
Now, you appointed a certain Mr. Baye as Minister of Housing. After 2 years, you think that Mr. Baye's skills and what he has demonstrated is that he should actually be Minister of Education.
That's if they're looking at his skills.
Yes,
Indeed.
Yes, all right? And you now post me to the Ministry of Education. I will go through another hearing about becoming Minister of Education. Yes.
Not that you just slam the person
No,
into...
not that you just move me to the Ministry of Education. That is what the system is supposed to be. Done correctly. Done correctly.
Wow.
So not that, yes, it doesn't mean that because you wear this, you will be. And they say, oh, if you've been a senator, you can run any ministry. Again, that's not true. In an ideal setting, and I'll cite an example, John Tower was chairman of Senate Committee on Defense in the U.S. Was a very respected senator, top-class senator. When it came to making him Secretary of Defense, I thought it was George Bush. I think George Bush Sr. made him Secretary of Defense. And the Senate said, hey, this man has problems with womanizing. He has problems with drinking. The judgment call for Secretary of Defense is too serious for this person to hold that sort of position.
Because of the 2 vices?
Yes, yes. His friends, they could not defend him. Even recently, Chuck Hagel, He was a powerful member of the Senate Committee on Defense on the Republican side, and I think he was even chairman of the Senate Committee on Defense, if I remember correctly. When he came to his confirmation, the Republicans grilled him thoroughly and made a mincemeat of him. He was just saved by the fact that a few Republicans joined with some Democrats and confirmed him. So the system should take a lot of subjectivity out of it. What is happening today is that 60-40, 60 subjective, 40 objective.
Objective.
Yes. It should be moving closer to 80-20, 90-10. That is 90 objective, 10 subjective. That is based on whether I like you. I mean, whether Dakpo greets me very well.
Doesn't really matter. Just know your onions now. That's what really matters.
Yes,
right?
that's what matters. Now, this is not a problem of just Buhari. This has been a problem from the time we've been practicing presidential system.
So it's been a systematic
yes,
problem.
and we have not, in my view, we have not improved in that area.
Have you ever thought about this, what we're talking about? Because if they really thought about this, we cannot just bring a round peg. I know some people are good, maybe like in the engineering part, and they don't know anything about agriculture. But at the end of the day, okay, let's just put this man there. Is that the problem we've been having about development in this country? It
is part of the problem. And also, as I said, is historic and is systemic. But don't forget that, look, the fact that, the fact that I'm a brilliant academic does not mean that I will be a good policymaker.
Yes, yes.
All right? I mean, I may be so brilliant that I deserve to be given Nobel Prize, but I may not know how to relate with people in a complex organization. You see some vice chancellors don't do well, even though they are brilliant academics. I mean, you bow to them for their brain and their capacity. But when it goes to organization, so it is from those confirmation hearings that we know the organizational skills of the nominee. We know the people skills of the nominee. We know the soft skills of the nominee. It's not enough to be a very brilliant person if you do not know how to relate to people. If you shut down the door and just say, that is it, I'm the minister, that is it.
Wow. At that juncture, we need to go on a very short break. When we'll come back, we'll definitely continue where we stopped. Do stay with us, please.